Hello, this is Mark Tooley, president of the Institute on Religion and Democracy, with the pleasure today of conversation with my longtime friend Tim Goeglein of Focus on the Family in Washington, D.C., about his new book titled What Really Matters: Restoring a Legacy of Faith, Freedom, and Family, just released this month. Congratulations, Tim. And why did you write this
Thank you.
book?
Well, I wrote this book, Mark, because in my role as one of the vice presidents at Focus on the Family, I travel all the time. And in the academic year, I'm on a different college campus every week or every other week, as various as Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Georgetown, and Hillsdale, Azusa Pacific, the Concordias, and Liberty. So it goes the gamut. And a couple of years ago, after I finished my remarks and the kind of Q&A that's part of a speaker's life. There are always a few undergraduates who kind of stay around to continue the conversation. And there was a woman who was a junior at the time, and she said something to me that was important. She said, "Why is it that in the place where you live, meaning Washington, D.C., she said, generally, why does the political class seem to talk about everything except for what really matters?" And that phrase really, Mark, stuck with me. And I think there's some truth to it. The political class, and rightfully, it talks about border security and deportations and taxes and wars and all the things that the political class needs to and should talk about. But as my fellow Washingtonian, that it is also true that most members, I think, of the political class, broadly defined, prefer not to speak or really engage proactively on the issues that matter most: marriage, family, parenting, human life, religious liberty, conscience rights, parental rights, pronouns that have fixed meanings, this kind of thing. And so, over time, I'm a regular contributor to a number of places, including the Federalist, the Daily Signal, et cetera, the Washington Times. And so I thought it would be good to kind of slim into a volume, a robust defense of the first principles, the first things, the institutions that matter. And so I subtitled What Really Matters: Restoring a Legacy of Faith, Freedom, and Family. And I'm an inveterate optimist, and I actually believe that there is a bit of a quiet American restoration and revival that is actually underway. And I think that for all the rightfully concerning issues that we see, Mark, I think also there are some seeds that have been planted that are germinating in ways that I think are quite refreshing.
Tim, you've been in the field a long time. You served in the George W. Bush administration, prior to which I believe you worked for Senator Coates
I did, yes.
from Indiana. So you've watched these issues a long time. You say you're an optimist. Being an optimist is not fashionable right now, and maybe it never is. But in terms of the family issues that you're addressing in your book, how has the field changed on these issues now compared to 30 years ago, and why are you optimistic?
Yeah, I love both of those questions. The first is that I worked for nearly 10 years in the Senate for U.S. Senator Dan Coates, which in dog years, Mark, is about 70,000 years, and the White House for nearly 8 for George W. Bush, and in dog years, that's about a million. Because the tenure track for people there, the burnout is high, and the last 18 as one of the vice presidents at Focus on the Family. And knowing who I'm speaking to, a great friend and compatriot, I remember one of the very first substantial meetings I had when I had come to the office of Dan Coates, who was a newly minted U.S. Senator following the tenure of Dan Quayle. And in that meeting, Mike Gerson, who was at the time a new speechwriter for Dan Coates, a woman who would go on to become a chief of staff for three Senate majority leaders, Sharon Soderstrom and a number of others, were meeting with the senator. And this conversation was about the planks that would become a program called the Project for American Renewal. And I think it was rooted, Mark, in a lot of the ideas of people who you and I hold in very high regard: Daniel Patrick Moynihan, James Q. Wilson, Norman Podhoretz, Irving Kristol, those who believed that the foundations of the country, and I'm speaking quite apart from the kind of neoconservative, broadly national or security defense planks, very important. But in these years, many of the people we're talking about, B. Himmelfarb, Midge Decter, Michael Novak, they care deeply about the domestic, kind of ecology of the next generation. And so Dan Coates, put a kind of a legislative face to these great ideas. And at the time, I don't mind saying, the overwhelming majority of people in the establishment of both the Republican and the Democratic Party thought this was a bit of a fool's errand, that after the moral and social revolution of the 60s and 70s, was it really Washington's or anybody's idea of cultural renewal? Well, here we are nearly 40 years later, and you snap your fingers because it seems like in the sands of time it was yesterday. And in fact, I think it's fair to say, Mark, and not an overstatement, that many of those major issues, and you were very much a part of that, many of those major issues now are the ones that everybody of goodwill says are the most important concerning issues we have: the lowest marriage rates in American history, the lowest fertility rates in American history, deeply concerning statistics and empirical data about young men and about young American women, a kind of historical and cultural illiteracy that is deeply concerning in this 250th year of our nation's birth, and what the next generation knows about the sustenance of liberty and freedom over time. So those are the concerning issues. I think those are the ones that many of the public intellectuals who you and I then and now regarded were right about. And the question in our generation is what those of us in public policy, those of us who work every day, either in ministry or the nonprofit sector, and the way that we connect with people in politics of both political parties, what we're really going to do about what really matters. And that's in large measure, that is not only why I wrote the book, but in part, it's my optimism, because I do think that there are people of goodwill in both political parties who, even though we may have yawning disagreements and maybe unbridgeable chasms in other ways, I think people of goodwill now are looking at the data that we're looking at and saying this is a profound crisis in many ways. The fatherlessness crisis is quite enormous in America. The MIT trained economist and author Melissa Kearney, I think, has written an extraordinarily important book. She's a person of the left, a progressive, a Democrat, but on the analysis of what is really good for the rising generation of young boys and girls, she's spot on, because all the empirical data seems to say, overwhelmingly, frankly, that it's really important that you have a mother and a father raising their children together. I think Pat Moynihan made these points very eloquently, as recently as the 1990s, when he talked about what he thought was incontrovertible, Mark, that marriage orients men and women toward the future, because it asks them not just to commit to each other, but to plan and to earn and to save and to devote themselves to advancing their children's prospects. And I think that what really matters in this book, that is precisely the kind of narrative that I want to put forward.
Now, Tim, as an optimist, you appreciate there have been some positive trends on these issues in recent years. For many years, the abortion rates were going down. They seem to have notched up recently. Hopefully, that's a temporary trend. Divorce rates have been going down. It seems that rates of illegitimacy, after climbing for so many decades, have leveled and maybe even be going down. Alcohol use, drug use have been going down.
Yes.
Uh, Sexual activity among teenagers is down. Out of wedlock births among teenagers is down. So, some good news. What's the bad news that you're most concerned about right now?
Well, by the way, I agree with your analysis A to Z, and I write about it in What Really Matters. And I hope people will get the book and read it. And I think in many ways be reconfirmed, Mark, in much of what you and I agree in the way that you articulated it. What I try to do in the chapters of the book, which are not more than 6 or 7 chapters, is to show the sobering news, what some of the empirical data reveal. And I try to share at the same time that it's not all sobering and concerning news, that there's actually quite good news. So here's the sobering news. For instance, in my chapter on the restoration of marriage, I demonstrate that fewer than half of U.S. households are now consist of married couples. In the long history of the United States, that would have been considered in almost any generation shocking. But we're only 50 years away from the period of time when the majority of American homes consisted of married people, and that number now, is well under 50%. It was, I think, almost 70% less than 50, thus less than 50 years ago. The good news, and I think it's really good news, is that of a sudden you have a remarkable generation of young men, 18 to 30, who in reliable surveys say they want to be married, they want to have children, they want to have a lifelong commitment with one person. They and are very eager to return to church, to have a faith, a consistent, stable faith and religious life. And frankly, even though, Mark, those numbers are not the same in the demographic of young American women, 18 to 25 or 30, aspirationally, those numbers are pretty high. And the reason I think for this gap is what our friend Nick Eberstadt at AEI has found. That women are eager, whether they're progressive women or conservative women, they're looking for continuity and stability, and they're not finding it in unmarriageable men who, in large numbers in America, despite the good news with some of these young people. But many of these young men are not in school. They're not seeking to be in school. They're not working. They're not seeking a job. And the question is, are they unmarriageable? And in many ways, I think that presently they are. This commitment to work and continuity and stability seems to have slid for a particular demographic. And I think that while we see good trends among some young people, there are the counter sobering news that I think we need to keep in mind.
Obviously, Tim, all of these issues are very tied to religious practice in America. And
Yes.
many years we have watched the rise of the religious or irreligious nuns, those who are religiously unaffiliated, so that maybe the percentage of America that self identifies as Christian is somewhere between 60 or 65% now. The good news is the decline of Christianity seems to have stopped for the moment,
Yes.
and religious practice is maybe, perhaps, going up. A Gallup poll last week showing an increase in religious self-identification and practice among young men, a positive trend that hopefully will contribute constructively to the issues you're discussing. But what are you seeing anecdotally in terms of religious practice among young people and people of all ages?
Yeah, I'm glad, and I'm glad that you phrased it that way, if I may say, because I was doing a very interesting discussion and panel with friends at Real Clear Politics, Mark, of all days on Good Friday, and I said near the end of my comments that I thought we would be seeing very good news, not only in ruby red America, ex-urban or rural America on Easter Sunday and Holy Week and Holy Weekend, but I thought that we would be seeing very good news in blue America, urban America. It wasn't just what people used to say are kind of Christmas and Easter Christians. I think it's something different. I think, as you say, anecdotes are not data, but what we saw overwhelmingly is that houses of worship were packed on Easter Sunday, and overwhelmingly with a demographic that many parishioners or congregants hadn't seen in many years, which is a lot of young people, 30 years of age and under. And I think, Mark, in part, we know that it's because during COVID, there was incredible isolation, there was dislocation. And I think because we're made for relationships in the years that the country has reopened and people have, I think, rediscovered the importance of friendship and relationship and all the things we're talking about. They find it and they want that sort of thing in religious communities. We are spiritual beings. And to the second point of what you said, and I think this is even more important, Breitbart used to say over and over again, that politics is downstream from culture. But I think we're finding that culture and politics are downstream from things of the spirit, that if we're really seeking restoration and renewal, and I think that we are seeking that. I think that it's things of the spirit, as you say and suggest, Mark, that will navigate us toward either the restoration in America that we seek and want, or the negation of it. And I feel quite certain that it's not just in the traditional, as I say, red parts of the country where this is happening or could happen. I think we are seeing it, and we're going to continue to see it unconventionally in places where, although progressives don't seem to be as religious friendly, more narrowly defined, I think that the affluence and education levels of many urban elites confirm much of what our friends at the University of Virginia have found in Brad Wilcox and his wonderful circle of people, is that, in fact, in a way that seems counterintuitive, many people who articulate, a more progressive view on the matters we're talking about, actually in their own home lives, tend to live far more conservatively. They want to be married. They want to raise good kids. They want the kind of continuity, stability, order, trajectory, what we have come to call the success sequence. And I also think that increasingly that success sequence is not only being legislated now in 3 states, which I think is great, but I think the word is really getting out. That we can't just give lip service to the restoration of the moral ecology of young America. We have to do something about it. 3 out of every 4 suicides or drug overdoses are now among young men. And I'll tell you, Mark, I spoke very recently at an Ivy League college. In fact, just 3 weeks ago, Saturday. And after I spoke, I was asking just the young men who were there. I said, how many of you would say that you do not have, forget having a circle of friends, how many, just among the men, how many of you would say that you have not even a close friend? And Mark, there was a semi-forest of hands. 15% nationwide, 15% of American men say they have no friends. That the result of that, the meaning of that is much of what really matters. What really matters is concerned about. How do we address that? What do we do about that? Those of us that focus on the family, it's one of the primary reasons of what we do in ministry, and I think that matters now more than ever and focuses nearly a 50-year history. But I also think that others have come to see that what was once defined as a more conservative Christian worldview actually has really good implications for building a great life. And I think that people are seeing that, and I think it's something that they want in their own lives.
Tim, please hold up a copy of your book.
I'd be happy to do that. Again, what really matters? and it's available everywhere, everywhere that people like to buy books. It can be Amazon, it can be Target, it can be Barnes and Noble, or any place else. There it is, and I hope people will read and enjoy it and share it with their 5,000 best friends.
Tim, author of What Really Matters, Restoring a Legacy of Faith, Freedom, and Family. I appreciate this very edifying and encouraging conversation.
Thank you, Mark. Really great to be with you, and many blessings.